Hello, this is the Generally Bad Gamer, and I'm back to discuss some more Tome of Champions 2021 for Warcry. For this video, I will be discussing the Underworlds warbands from the Death Grand Alliance that have been added to Warcry. As with the other videos, I will discuss any abilities that they have, pros that I think the warband has or brings to the faction, cons I think they have, and anything else that comes to mind. So here we go. First up, we have the Grymwatch. This is the Underworld's warband for Flesh Eater's Courts. I think their ability is useful. It's the same one that we've seen with some other warbands that were added through Underworlds. It is a double, and pick a visible friendly fighter with both the Grymwatch rune mark and the minion rune mark within 3 inches of this fighter. That fighter can make a bonus attack action. So all of the ghouls, so those 5 ghouls that we see at the top of the page, have the minion rune mark and the Grymwatch rune mark, of course. So they can all use this double while they are within 3 inches of the leader. And actually, it is the leader that uses the ability to have one of them do the bonus attack. So that's pretty good. Being able to have some of your models do bonus attacks is pretty nice. And a couple of them have some alright attack profiles, so I like the ability. Now, the pros of this warband is that they add a new model type. There is a set of bats there, which are pretty sweet. They are 75 points. They have a 10 movement with flying. They are very squishy at only 2 toughness and 8 hit points, but they are sub 100 point high movement flyer, which is going to be good for objective games or when you just need to move around. So adding that model type is pretty sweet. Adding another solid leader type is awesome also. So Duke Crackmarrow himself there is 140 points. Pretty decent profile. Alright attack profile, the good 5 speed, 20 hit points. He's pretty solid for 140 points. And then there are also just more characterful chaff options. So as you can see, those models, I find them more interesting overall than the normal ghoul models. And they each have a different profile too. So those points and profiles vary depending on what you pick, but it's just some more characterful chaff options. Now the cons to this warband are they aren't a huge con. It's just a con in my eyes, is that they don't add much to the playstyle. If you like the playstyle and you're fine with that, there's not really any cons this warband adds. You get a cheaper fast flying option through the bats, but overall, the way you're going to play your Flesh Eater's Course isn't going to really change much. But once again, that's just a preference con. There aren't a whole lot of cons to this warband, actually, if you pick them up. There are some pretty nice options. Uh, some of the ghouls might be worth taking, some of them might be not, but they all are more characterful and they all have different stat lines. So overall, pretty sweet warband that's been added to Warcry. Next, we have Thorns of the Briar Queen. Her ability is good. I like her ability. It's a unique one that we haven't quite seen yet, as far as I know. And even if it is in the game, it's one that's new to Night Haunt. It is for a triple. Pick a visible enemy fighter within 9 inches of this fighter and roll a number of dice equal to the value of this ability. For each 4 plus, allocate 3 damage points to that fighter. In addition, for each 4 plus, subtract 1 from the move characteristic, to a minimum of 1, of that fighter until the end of the battle round. This ability is pretty sweet. It's got decent range on it with 9 inches. It's a triple, so it's obtainable. You do want triples that have higher dice values with it, so there is that. But you get to roll a pretty decent number of dice if you have a 4 or higher dice value. And then for each 4 plus, you're doing 3 damage, and you're also taking 1 off of the movement of that model until the end of the battle round. This is sweet if you want a decent chance of finishing off somebody who's low hit points from a ways away, or probably the better use for it is just trying to slow down the enemy's big hitting models, or one of their models that's a big hitter. Because if you get 2 or 3 4+s on a roll and they're down 2 or 3 movement, chances are that big hitter's not making it anywhere that round. So it lets you kind of control the board and the pace of the game a little more. I really like it. I think it's a good triple. The Briar Queen herself is also pretty solid. Uh, she's Night Haunt solid. So 22 hit points, 5 toughness, 5 movement. That all looks good. She's got a ranged attack that's 3 to 9 inches, and it's pretty much a standard magic blast attack, strength 2. I mean, attacks 2, strength 3, 2, 5 damage profile. Not great. Her melee profile is not amazing, but she still is an awesome leader option for the Night Haunt. I like her as a leader option. There's also uh, there's also the other pro, in addition to a new leader option with an awesome ability, is that there is another fighter option that's pretty durable. So Varclaw the Cruel, the one that's holding the candle in the lower left, his profile is pretty nice for Night Haunt. He's speed 5, toughness 4, 16 hit points. Now, 16 hit points is quite a few hit points for a Night Haunt model. And he's 130 points, so what you get hit point wise for the 130 points is really, really nice for a Night Haunt model. And his attack profile is alright too. 3 attack, strength 3, a 2-4 profile. So once again, you're getting that 2 damage as your non-crit, which is fairly rare for Night Haunt and also pretty nice. So I like him also as another option. Now the cons for this warband is that her chain rasp I don't think are worth taking over normal chain rasp. They're 10 points more than a normal chain rasp, and from what I can see, the only thing they get is they get 1 additional point in crit. So instead of a 1-2 damage profile, it's a 1-3 damage profile. With Night Haunts, a lot of times you're scratching for those extra points, so that way you could fit in a decent amount of models or some models that might impact the game more. So the 10, 20, 30, 40 points that you would save by taking normal chain rasp is probably worth it. It allows you to squeeze in some better models elsewhere. The Everhanged also, the guy with the noose around his neck in the back here, he is also kind of meh for his stats. I can see maybe taking him, but he's meh. So the cons are that most of the models in this warband, the chaff, all the 5 that we see in the top of the picture there, probably aren't worth taking over other models from Night Haunts. But the leader option and Varclaw with the candle there, they're both pretty sweet options. This isn't also, like most of the Underworld warbands, a good starting place for new players. If they pick this up in some Spirit Host or some Banshees or something, they would have a functional warband. But if you're building a more complete or more competitive warband, you'll probably leave out these chain rasp. All right. Next, we have Kainan's Reapers, who are for the Bone Reapers. His ability is meh to bad to not very useful most of the time. It is a quad. This fighter makes a bonus attack action. In addition, add 1 to the attacks and strength characteristics of that attack action. So this is Kainan himself is the only one that can use this. It is a quad, which means it's not going to be super used all the time already. And really, it's if you are already in melee with something, you would use this over Rampage because you would get +1 attack and +1 strength. But Rampage is still the more versatile quad. So this is, like I said, meh. And the fact that it can only be used on Kainan is disappointing. He doesn't have the best attack profile for his point cost. He's 230 points. He has an attack of a range of 2, 3 attack, strength 5, 2, 5 damage. It's not the best for being over 200 points. And he also has a range attack, which is the standard magic blast attack, which I'm pretty sure that's what up his point cost a bit. So I'm not sold on him as a solid leader option as far as being competitive. So the pros to this warband is that they are a good standard entry for new players. If they pick this up in some stalkers, they're going to have a functional warband. The other pro of this is that there is a ranged unit for the Bone Reapers that isn't one of the very mediocre magic range attacks. Now, granted, The bow attack isn't the most fantastic. It is a 3 to 15-inch range. It's only 2 dice, 3 strength, 1 3 damage profile. So you're not going to take out a lot with the range attack. But I'm personally a fan of having some pot shot range attack units in a warband. They're good for taking out a straggler that's in the 1 hit point club. They're good for maybe pot shotting some damage on something as it's coming in. So having that unit option to take a guy for range attack, I like it. I think it's pretty sweet. The biggest con, and I've already talked about this some, is that Kainan himself is overall a weak leader option, I feel. He doesn't bring anything particularly interesting to the warband as far as leader options. And I'm talking overall with the Bone Reapers. And he's a lot of points. So I think the Bone Reapers have a couple other leader options that are better. But once again, as I said earlier, good starting spot for new players. Next, we have the Crimson Court. This is for the Soulblight Gravelords. They have 2 abilities. The first one, I think, is a good option. It might not be one that you always use, but it is a double. If the next attack action made by this fighter, this activation, targets an enemy fighter with any damage points allocated to them, add 1 to the attacks and strength characteristic of that attack action. Now, this is an alternative to Onslaught. If you're already in combat, Onslaught's probably going to be better because it's going to give you an extra attack for each of the 2 attack actions you do. But if you are moving in and then doing an attack, you have that extra double. This is a really nice different option to Onslaught because you'll get that attack on the next attack action. You also get the 1 better strength, which strength always isn't a huge thing, but in some cases it's nice for just guaranteeing that you get a little extra damage in there. I like this. I think it's a good option. With doubles, options are always fun and always interesting and always nice. Now, the next ability is for Prince Duval himself. It is a double also. Until the end of the battle round, add 1 to the damage points allocated by each critical hit from attack actions made by friendly fighters that target an enemy fighter within 6 inches of this fighter. So he creates an aura around himself, and any enemies that are getting attacked by a friendly fighter are going to take 1 extra damage from crits. I like it. Once again, it's a double. It's interesting. I think having an interesting double is kind of a lot of times puts a double into that good status. It's an aura, and one of the things with a bunch of the Soulblight Gravelord models is you will probably crit fishing a decent amount. So if you have 1 double and you have several of the generic vampires, oh man, I can't remember the name of them at the moment, but the 120 point ones that were added through Cursed City, they're pretty nice. They get 4 attacks. They have like a 1/4 damage profile. So you crit fish with them a decent amount. If you have a couple of them within range of this ability to make use of it, and you only have 1 double, I think this is going to be a good use of that ability versus just having 1 of them onslaught, especially if they all have to move in. I think it's a good ability. I think it's interesting, and I think it is useful if you're taking Prince Duval. Now, the overall pros of the Crimson Court is that it's more vampire options. So, if you have been one of those people who have been wanting to put together vampire war bands, and the Vikros Bloodborne, I think is what they're called, the generic vampires I was thinking of. Even with them, sometimes you can only get up to 3 or 4 vampires in a war band. And that's if you had the Vikros Bloodborne models. I don't know how hard how hard it is to actually get a hold of them at the moment. It might be difficult right now. But these are more vampire options. So if you like that vampire route, more options for you. And also solid stats on most of these guys. The guy with the wings, he has a similar profile to the Vikros Bloodborne. He has 2 less movement, but he has flying. So he is pretty mobile, and he gets the same number of attacks and has the same damage profile as them, and he's 5 points less, so he's good. Von Fane, the woman we see on the left side there, she's got a solid attack profile. She's 120 points. She's toughness 4, 16 hit points, so she's a little more durable than the Vikros Bloodborne. She's slower than them, but she gets 4 attacks, and her damage profile is 1/5, so she's a good alternative option to them as well. So you just get some good stats on a bunch of these models. Cons? I'm not sure this warband has a bunch of cons. I think most of the models are pretty solid. The guy with the two-handed mace there, his stats aren't the best for his points, but I think he's still playable, especially if you want vampires as the majority of your warband. So I think the biggest con is just preference. Do you want to run these fighters, or do you want to go more of the horde skeleton route? I don't see a bunch of downside to these guys overall. I think they're pretty solid. Finally, we have the Sepulchral Guard, and I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that right. So we have the Skeleton Guard. They have one ability, and I think it's bad, and I'll explain why it's bad here in a second. It is a triple. A fighter can use this ability only if there is a visible enemy fighter within 6 inches of them. This fighter makes a bonus move action and must finish closer to the closest visible enemy fighter than they were at the start of the move action. So it's a charge ability. Charge abilities are awesome. Every other charge ability, though, in the game that I know of is a double. And this one being a triple really makes it bad. They're all only movement 3 to begin with. So even if you are within 6 inches, that bonus move a lot of times will not get you into engagement range. It'll get you closer, which is good, but it still won't get you into engagement range. And it being a triple, I don't understand why it's a triple. Why can't it just be a double like everybody else's charge move that they get? I think it being triple pushes into that bad territory. It's using a triple to close in 3 extra inches is rough. The pros is that the warden there, the guy on the lower left with the spear, is the cheapest leader option in the Soulblight graveyards. So if you're looking for another cheap leader option, a secondary one, or even just a primary cheap leader option, he's pretty good because he'll bring all of your normal abilities, your resurrect ability, the ones that let minions use the bonus move action, which is a double. It's a normal Soulblight graveyard ability. So he's a good secondary cheap leader option. The other pro to this warband is that they have a couple very good low-cost Mook models. So we're looking at the Petitioner of Sword, the one in the lower right that's coming out of the ground. His stats are phenomenal for 40 points. 40 points, you get 3 attacks, a strength 3, that's a 1-3 damage profile. Nice. He's 3 move, 3 toughness, 10 hit points. So he's got more hit points than a normal skeleton, and he's same attack profile as a normal skeleton of sword. He's 40 hit points. He's a solid low cost option. The Harvester, the one with the scythe in the back, is also a very solid option. 50 hit points, 2 range on his melee weapon, 3 attack, strength 3, 1-4. Once again, 10 hit points, 50 points total. He's also a solid low cost move option. So those two are both very good as far as having some low cost options. The biggest con to this warband is none of the skeletons have the minion rune mark. So that means you can't use the normal Soulblight graveyard abilities with them. You can't resurrect any of these skeletons, which is a bummer. You can't use Shambling Horde on any of them, so none of them can get the free move action for a double when they're within 6 inches of the leader. I think that's disappointing overall. There's still reason to take the Petitioner Sword and the Harvester, and even the Warden if you want the cheap leader option, but I think them not having the minion rune mark drops the other ones out of contention with normal skeletons and Graveguard that you could resurrect and do that double bonus move action with. Once again, good starting point, couple cool options, so if you like skeletons in your army, it's a pretty solid pickup. There's just a few options that are a little disappointing than others. All right. So that is our review of the Underworld warbands from the Death Grand Alliance. Once again, as always, check out other reviewers when they put up content. Check out the Warcry Discord, which you can access by going to the Warcry Reddits and looking for their sticky post. As always, the Warcry Discord has a bunch of awesome people on it. And everybody enjoy your gaming. This is the Generally Bad Gamer, out.